A flock of low clouds sifted across the corries above Strathbrora, dappling the grass in bruised purples and emerald flashes. From dawn, the showgrounds behind the kirk had thrummed with the tufty-eared basso rumble of Highland cattle and the anticipatory chatter of hundreds of spectators. Turf had been trimmed, banners strung between lorry beds, and a makeshift runway of pale wood planks raised so judges could make eye-level inspections of the cattle's massive horns. "Mind the camera, Isla," called Tom McKinnon, the local reporter, as he angled for a photograph of an 18-stone red bull named Goliath parading past. Isla Grant skittered sideways, lifting the hem of her linen smock. Flecks of dried milk pigment peppered the side of her neck. She'd spent the previous night finishing a mural for the show committee, a gold-tinted triptych painted with reduced whey instead of watercolours. It celebrated 90 years of the grand Highland Cow Parade, and she hadn't slept a wink. She'd agreed in return to a small stall where visitors could watch her swirl colour into bowls of skimmed milk and stroke portraits onto slate. Children were already clustered around her table when the piping started and the first group of handlers ushered their beasts into formation. The morning rolled on like a well-tuned Sailith set. Rosettes were awarded. The smell of grilled venison pies mingled with the sweet tang of trampled clover. Then came the moment everyone waited for, the procession of the 4 herd champions round the central ring to the judging pen. At their head strode Dougal McRae, a wedge-shouldered man with a glacier's patience and the thick auburn beard of an ancestral bard. He led Brora Flame, a cinnamon cow whose horns spanned 5 feet tip to tip. Isla admired the squared hush of Dougal's hands, how he guided Flame with almost invisible nudges. Herdsmanship, she thought, was as much artistry as any painting. Then the band cut out mid-bar, and a ragged gasp rippled through the bleachers. Flame, usually docile, lashed her head. A horn caught Dougal beneath the ribs and pitched him backwards so suddenly that his tweed cap hovered an instant in the air before tumbling after him. Spectators shrieked. The rope lead snapped free. Dougal landed behind the judging pen with a thump that sounded to Isla's ears like a dropped sack of wet grain. The stewards reacted swiftly, roping Flame, herding the other cattle out of danger, but scarlet spread across Dougal's cream waistcoat in a hurry. Isla, frozen at the rail, felt heat drain from her skull. The Grand Highland Cow Parade ends when the lead handler is gored behind the judging pen, Tom muttered beside her, writing the sentence almost before he knew he'd spoken. They'll print that in every paper from here to Dundee. As medics knelt beside Dougal, Isla's thoughts whirled in conflicting motions. Concern for the injured man, disbelief at the freakish turn, and something else, an itch of wrongness. The blow had looked deliberate, not from the cow, but from the universe. Hours later, when Dougal was ferried by ambulance to Inverness Hospital, still alive but hemorrhaging, rain began to stipple the grandstand boards. The crowd dispersed, murmuring the way folk do when the ordinary has tilted. Isla packed her brushes and bowls, dazed. She had grown up on a small dairy outside Tain. She knew cattle, calm one moment, skittish the next, but a champion cow handled daily by the same man did not gore him without provocation. That night, unable to sleep again, Isla set out her portable easel in the showground's empty pasture. She emptied a bottle of skim into a flat tin and stirred in crimson pigment. In her head the day replayed frame by frame. Brora Flame's hoof placement, Dougal's stance, the shift of her flank before she struck. Isla's hand moved almost automatically, painting a series of silhouettes onto a length of untreated canvas while rain pattered around her. Buried in the rhythm, she failed at first to hear bootsteps. When she glanced up, Rory McRae, Dougal's eldest son, hovered beneath the floodlights, his face blotched sallow. "They said you were still here," he murmured. In the harsh light, he looked prematurely aged, mouth pinched by those who fear hope is naive. "How is your father?" Isla asked. "Surgeons are working. They dinna ken yet." Rory hesitated, eyeing the bloody milk strokes that bled across her canvas. "Some folk think Flame went wild. I've led her myself 7 years. She's no wild." Isla nodded, emboldened. "Something spooked her." "Aye, or someone," Rory said. His tone held more suspicion than grief. "Dar keeps his herd meticulous. That rope of his was cut clean. Did you notice?" Isla's pulse ticked up. She had noticed a frayed edge, but amid the chaos she'd assumed it snapped from strain. "Will you let me look at Flame?" she asked. "They quarantined the champions till the inspectors come, but I can get us in." Rory's eyes glittered at the prospect of action. "If you're willing." "I need light," Isla said, glancing at the canvas. The figures resembled a storyboard, the cow, the man, the arc of the horn, and one piece unsolved, the cause. She hunched a waterproof over her supplies and followed Rory toward the steel sheds. Rain intensified, drumming the corrugated roofs. In stall 4, Brora Flame shifted anxiously, tail flicking. A halogen lamp cast yellow warmth. Isla approached slow, palm visible. Flame's massive head lowered, breath huffing like bellows. Rory stroked her forelock. "Easy, Mo Cree." Isla knelt along the cow's left side, scanning for burrs or thistle that might have jabbed. Nothing. Horns were smooth. As she examined the collar beneath Flame's chin, her fingertip stung. She jerked back. A sliver of sharp metal jutted from the leather inner band. "Hold her," Isla whispered. She eased the collar open and drew out a curious device, a barbed tack, notched to pierce inward. It looked recently driven through the leather. Every time the rope snapped taut, the barb would bite. Enough sudden pain, and even the calmest cow would lunge. "Sabotage," Rory breathed. "Who'd—" Isla bagged the tack in a sample envelope she carried for gathering pigment soils. "Anyone with access to the stalls. Someone wanting your father out of the competition, or worse." They locked the collar safely and retreated. Outside, the rain had eased, and the moon revealed threadbare clouds scudding east. "We need to tell the inspectors," Rory said. "We will," Isla promised, "but evidence is brittle till we show how it was used. I want to recreate the moment." "Recreate? I'll paint it," she said, surprised by her own certainty. "People see stories better than they hear them. Tomorrow, at the pasture, we'll show the judges, and the saboteur will recognize their work." Rory's skepticism flickered, then steadied into resolve. "What do you need?" "Every detail you can give me about who came near Flame this week." He exhaled a list. Callum Boyd, rival breeder, who'd argued with Dougal about stall placement. Maisie Ord, an agricultural insurance assessor hovering since Tuesday. And Lachlan Fraser, showgrounds maintenance, recently laid off but still carrying keys. Isla memorized each name. "Meet me here at dawn." That night, she slept 2 hours in a borrowed caravan, waking as swallows wove silver threads across the pale horizon. She mixed fresh milk with umber and ochre, stretched canvas over a spare gate panel, and painted the showering, leaving the centre blank for final touches later. By 8, inspectors combed the sheds. Rory alerted them to the tampered collar, but kept silent about the barbed tack, claiming only that evidence existed and would be displayed shortly. The officials, suspecting legal repercussions, agreed to a public session after lunch. Word spread fast that the dairy artist would paint the pasture red with answers, a phrase Tom McKinnon printed in bold on a chalkboard near the tea tent. It echoed across the grounds like prophecy. The grand Highland cow parade ends when the lead handler is gored behind the judging pen, steering dairy artist Isla Grant to paint the pasture red with answers. At noon, under a vault of dazzling blue, Isla hauled her gate canvas to the exact patch where Dougal fell. The central blank space sat like an open wound. Gathered spectators buzzed, bets whispered on who'd be blamed. Callum Boyd lounged with arms crossed. Maisie Ord clutched a clipboard. Lachlan Fraser paced at the back, jaw working a wad of gum. Isla called for quiet. Rory stood beside her, holding Brora Flame's sabotaged collar in a sealed evidence bag. "Yesterday," Isla began, "you saw an accident. Today I'll show why it was no accident." With a broad brush loaded in crimson milk paint, she stroked a diagonal slash across the canvas, Flame's eruptive lunge. She added Dougal's silhouette, the arc of horn, droplets of scarlet spatter. Gasps escaped the audience. The milky red bled into fibres resembling real blood. Next, she painted a collar around Flame's neck, careful to exaggerate the hidden barb. She lifted the actual collar for all to see, pointed to the puncture hole, then displayed the tack in tweezers. This barb was inserted so the cow would stab herself whenever tension came on the lead. Dougal kept his rope at disciplined length. When he reined Flame toward the gate, Isla dabbed a final thick splodge of crimson at the silhouette's ribs. Pain surged, the cow jerked, horns struck. Murmurs swelled. The insurance assessor blanched, the rival breeder cursed under breath. But Isla watched Lachlan Fraser. The maintenance man's eyes did not waver from the tack. Sweat gleamed along his temple despite the breeze. "Who placed the barb?" Isla asked aloud. Only someone with tools, nocturnal access and motive. She turned the canvas, revealing 2 fresh sketches she'd prepared. One of a man in overalls wielding pliers, another of an insurance form stamped with "denied" across it. "Callum Boyd?" Isla stepped toward the breeder. "You argued with Dougal but run a pedigree program. Sabotage risks disease inspections on your own beasts." Callum shrugged, scowling but unflustered. Maisie Ord. "An accident would raise premiums, not lower them, complicating your audits." Maisie shook her head, relief flickering. "Lachlan Fraser," Isla said, voice soft. "Recently dismissed from the ground staff for stealing diesel. Yet your master key still fits every stall." She pulled from her apron a photograph Rory had found online that morning. Fraser at last year's show, standing beside Dougal, the same pliers clipped to his belt. Isla overlaid it against the painting of the saboteur. The likeness was unmistakable. Fraser scoffed. "Circumstantial. Anyone could own pliers." Isla's heart hammered, but she pressed on. "True, but not everyone sold those pliers yesterday noon at Reeves' Tool Hut." She produced a sales slip bearing Fraser's name and the timestamp, proof he'd replaced his after tossing the original tack driver into the stream. Rory had dredged it up at dawn, its rubber handle etched with Fraser's initials. The maintenance man's face drained. He stepped back. 2 inspectors closed in. "I never meant to kill him," he spat. "Just wreck his chances so Boyd would pay me for the trophy next year." "Tell that to Dougal's surgeons," Rory said, voice raw. Fraser was marched off the field, while the crowd rustled with disbelieving exclamations. Isla's legs softened like milkskin, ready to tear. but she stayed upright as the head inspector loudly commended her. Reporters snapped photos of the blood-streaked painting. Children stared, wide-eyed. The story of the sabotage overshadowed the day's original tragedy. Isla wondered whether that was solace or simply new trauma. 2 hours later, she sat alone on a hay bale behind the tea tent. Tom McKinnon lingered with a flask of coffee. "Never seen paint used like that," he said. "You turned a pasture into a courtroom." Isla managed a wan grin. Her fingers smelled of iron. Though it was only pigment, the colour clung. A steward approached, breathless. "Miss Grant, Mr. McCrae's out of surgery, stable." Relief unknotted her spine. Rory caught up minutes later. His eyes brimmed. He squeezed Isla's hands. "You saved more than Dar's herd today. If that man had gone free—" Words failed him. Isla clasped his forearms. "A cow can't speak. We have to paint their truths for them." He chuckled through tears. "You'll come to the farm? They'll want to thank you once he mends." She nodded, and for the first time in 48 hours, exhaustion wrapped her gently, instead of flinging her into wakefulness. Evening settled. The clouds returned in salmon swathes. Isla packed her brushes, the incriminating tack sealed for police, and the canvas still wet at its crimson heart. She thought of the phrase that had ricocheted round the grounds, "Paint the pasture red with answers," and realized its sting would fade, replaced by the deeper hue of justice served. As she walked away, cows lowed softly in distant stalls, sounding to Isla like final applause for a show restored to honest footing, the artistry of skill and care reclaimed from the skulking shadow of sabotage.